The woman collapsed onto the curb just steps away from a crowded downtown cafe, clutching her empty stomach as people walked around her without slowing down. Expensive cars rolled past. Well-dressed strangers looked away. Some assumed she was homeless. Others believed she was pretending. Not one person offered a hand. Then, when it seemed the world had decided she wasn't worth noticing, a tired single father carrying a worn backpack and holding his little daughter's hand quietly sat beside her, and gave away the only meal he and his child had left for the day. Neither of them knew that the woman they were helping was the billionaire CEO of one of the country's largest companies, living one ordinary day in disguise to discover whether kindness still existed in a world obsessed with appearances. If you believe kindness can change lives, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in hope and second chances, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us the smallest acts of compassion often create the greatest miracles. Rowan Ellsworth had spent nearly 15 years building one of the most respected technology companies in America. Financial magazines celebrated her intelligence, business schools studied her leadership, and investors admired her fearless decisions. Yet despite every award displayed in her office, she carried a quiet emptiness that no success could erase. She remembered growing up in a modest neighborhood where neighbors shared groceries without keeping score and strangers stopped to help one another without expecting anything in return. Somewhere along the road to extraordinary wealth, she began wondering whether those moments still existed or whether people had simply become too busy to notice another person's pain. Instead of hiring consultants or reading surveys, Rowan made an unusual decision. She dressed herself in faded jeans, an oversized jacket with worn sleeves, old sneakers, and removed every trace of luxury from her appearance. She carried only a few dollars and left behind her phone, driver, assistants, and security team. For one ordinary day, she wanted the world to meet her as someone invisible. The morning sun was already warm as Rowan wandered through the city's busiest streets. She watched people rushing into office buildings while staring at expensive watches and glowing phone screens. She asked politely for directions even when she already knew the way, simply to observe how people responded. Some ignored her completely. Others barely looked into her eyes. One businessman accidentally bumped into her shoulder and continued walking without apologizing. A cafe employee assumed she intended to ask for money before she had spoken a single word. None of those moments surprised Rowan as much as they saddened her. She realized how quickly appearance shaped judgment. Across town, another difficult day had already begun for Grant Mercer. Since losing his wife, Clara, to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, every sunrise carried both responsibility and grief. He worked temporary construction jobs whenever they were available, cleaned office buildings during weekends, and repaired neighbors' fences for extra income. Nothing came easily, yet he refused to let his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, grow up believing life was only hardship. Every morning he braided her light brown hair as best he could after watching online tutorials, packed simple lunches when he could afford them, and reminded her that kindness was something nobody could ever take away. That particular afternoon, Grant had attended another job interview with hope hidden beneath exhaustion. The position promised steady work and health insurance, something that could finally provide stability. Unfortunately, the company had chosen someone with more recent experience. Grant thanked the interviewer respectfully before leaving, though disappointment settled heavily across his shoulders. His wallet held only enough money to buy one inexpensive sandwich. He divided it into 2 careful portions for himself and Hazel, smiling as though it were more than enough. As father and daughter walked toward the nearby public square, Hazel noticed Rowan sitting alone on the curb, pale and struggling to remain upright. Unlike the adults rushing around them, Hazel slowed immediately. Children often see humanity before appearances. She gently tugged her father's sleeve. Grant looked toward Rowan, understood her condition instantly, and without hesitation crossed the sidewalk. He offered Rowan the wrapped sandwich with quiet sincerity. His stomach growled loudly enough to embarrass him, yet he smiled anyway. Hazel reached into her backpack and handed Rowan the small apple she had been saving for later. Neither expected gratitude beyond a simple thank you. They certainly expected nothing in return. Rowan stared at the meal in disbelief. She knew from their worn clothing and patched backpack that they had almost nothing themselves. She hesitated, knowing accepting their food meant taking what little they possessed. Grant sensed her uncertainty and gently encouraged her through warm eyes filled with genuine concern rather than pity. His kindness wasn't charity. It was shared humanity. As Rowan slowly ate, strength returned to her face. Hazel chatted happily about school, her favorite library books, and her dream of becoming a veterinarian because she wanted every frightened animal to feel safe. Grant listened proudly, though worry occasionally crossed his expression whenever he believed his daughter wasn't looking. Without revealing her identity, Rowan spent the next hour walking beside them through the park. She learned about Clara's illness, the hospital bills that consumed their savings, and the difficult balance between earning enough money while remaining present for Hazel. Grant never complained. Instead, he spoke with gratitude for every teacher who encouraged Hazel, every neighbor who occasionally helped, and every sunrise that gave them another chance to keep moving forward. The conversation affected Rowan more deeply than any board meeting ever had. She realized that true wealth wasn't measured by financial statements but by the willingness to give even when life had given you very little. Before leaving, Rowan quietly asked Grant whether he believed good things eventually happen to good people. He smiled thoughtfully and admitted that life rarely felt fair, but bitterness only made heavy burdens even heavier. He wanted Hazel to grow into someone who believed generosity mattered whether anyone noticed or not. Rowan carried those words with her as she returned to her waiting driver several blocks away, her eyes filled with tears she hadn't expected. The following week, Grant received an unexpected invitation to interview at Ellsworth Innovations. He almost ignored the email, assuming it had been sent by mistake. Nevertheless, Hazel convinced him to attend because opportunities sometimes arrived wearing strange disguises. Grant entered the impressive headquarters wearing his only pressed shirt. Every polished floor and elegant hallway reminded him how different this world was from his own. When he was escorted into the executive conference room, he froze. Standing at the far end of the room was the woman from the sidewalk. Except now she wore a tailored navy suit, confident posture, and the unmistakable presence of someone every executive respected. Rowan smiled warmly before explaining everything. She confessed that she had spent one day anonymously experiencing life without privilege. She admitted that hundreds of people had passed her by, but one father and one little girl had offered everything they had without asking who she was or what she could provide in return. Grant stood speechless, embarrassed that he hadn't recognized her. Rowan quickly reassured him that recognizing her would have defeated the entire purpose. His kindness had been real precisely because he believed she was an ordinary stranger. She had not invited him to reward charity with charity. Instead, she had spent the previous week quietly verifying his work history, speaking with former supervisors, and discovering a consistent pattern. Everywhere Grant had worked, people described him as dependable, honest, hardworking, and deeply respected despite difficult circumstances. Rather than offering him money, Rowan offered him dignity. She created a facilities operations leadership position tailored to his years of practical experience, complete with professional training, health benefits, educational assistance for Hazel, and opportunities for long-term advancement. She wanted capable people leading by character instead of titles. Grant accepted with tears quietly filling his eyes. For the first time in years, he could imagine a future that wasn't built entirely around survival. Months passed, and remarkable changes unfolded naturally. Grant embraced every training opportunity with determination, surprising senior managers through his practical wisdom and calm leadership. Employees appreciated that he treated everyone with equal respect, from interns to executives. Rowan frequently observed him greeting maintenance staff with the same warmth he offered department directors. He never forgot where he had come from. Hazel flourished as well. Her school performance improved dramatically once financial stress eased at home. She joined the science club, volunteered at an animal shelter every weekend, and continued carrying small snacks in her backpack because she insisted someone else might someday need them more than she did. Inspired by their example, Rowan introduced a new company initiative encouraging employees to volunteer in local communities during paid service days. She expanded scholarship programs for children from struggling families and established emergency assistance funds for employees facing unexpected hardships. Rather than announcing these changes through expensive advertising campaigns, she encouraged quiet acts of compassion that placed people before publicity. Journalists eventually learned about Rowan's anonymous social experiment. Headlines praised the billionaire CEO who disguised herself to understand ordinary people. Yet when reporters asked what lesson mattered most, Rowan barely mentioned herself. She spoke instead about a father who had shared his last meal without expecting recognition and a little girl who had offered her treasured apple because compassion felt more important than convenience. The story spread across communities because it reminded people that extraordinary generosity often comes from those who possess the least. Schools discussed it. Families shared it around dinner tables. Employers reconsidered how they judged applicants whose lives had been interrupted by hardship. Thousands began performing small acts of kindness inspired by one simple decision made on a sunny afternoon. 1 year later, Rowan visited the same public square where everything had changed. This time she arrived dressed as herself, though she carried 3 wrapped sandwiches and a basket of fresh fruit. Grant and Hazel met her there during their lunch break. Together they quietly handed meals to anyone who appeared hungry, never asking questions and never expecting praise. Hazel smiled as she watched one elderly man gratefully accept a sandwich. She whispered that kindness seemed to grow every time someone shared it. Rowan realized the child had expressed in one sentence what countless leadership books had failed to teach. Before this story comes to its final moments, take a second to leave a meaningful comment. Tell us about a time when someone showed you unexpected kindness, or share the lesson you believe Grant and Hazel taught the world. Your words might encourage someone who feels invisible today. As the afternoon sun bathed the city in warm golden light, Rowan understood that the greatest investment she had ever made wasn't in technology, buildings, or markets. It had begun with one hungry father, one generous little girl, and one simple meal freely given. Grant discovered that hope sometimes arrived quietly after years of disappointment. Hazel learned that even the smallest gift could echo across countless lives. None of them became heroes because of wealth or status. They became unforgettable because they chose compassion when it would have been easier to look away. And that choice transformed not only their own futures but the hearts of everyone who heard their story. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that the richest people are not always those with the most money, but those whose hearts remain open enough to share their last meal with someone who needs it even more.